Hey, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to Courtroom Insider. It is the 7th of April, Monday, 7th of April, 2025. I'm Nate Eaton. Welcome. Thank you for being here, coming to you live from Phoenix. In fact, just on the other side of the camera, the sun is setting over the mountains and it looks so beautiful. I wish you all could see it. I won't turn the camera around, but what a day. We have a trial. The trial has begun. Lori Vallow Daybell is her own attorney. There's a picture of her at the witness stand this morning. Not the witness stand, the podium, I should say. The podium that's right in front of the jury. She addressed the jury in her opening statement. Trina Kay addressed the jury in her opening statements. And we have already heard from 3 witnesses today. Well, one witness will continue into tomorrow, but they are moving fast. And the judge is working to keep this case on track. And we did hear Lori today questioning those witnesses. And we'll go through it all tonight. I'm a little out of breath. I ran into my room here about 5 minutes ago. I was down the street at Chick-fil-A preparing this program for you tonight, so I hope you like it. So glad you're here. Please let me know where you're watching from it. If you have any questions, I'll get to those here at the end of the broadcast. We have a lot to talk about. So here's exactly what we're going to talk about tonight. A juror already down. We're down 1 juror. What happened this morning is that, well, first of all, we got started a little late because one of the jurors was tardy. And then there was another juror, juror number 3, who came with a letter from his boss, who we don't know the contents of the letter, but it was written to the judge. And the employer of this letter was apparently concerned about his employee serving jury service. The employee sat through opening statements. The judge then dismissed the rest of the jury and questioned the one juror and basically said, is this your concern or your employer's concern? He said it was a little bit of both. He realized after he was picked for the jury last week that he would not be paid from his employer if he served on the jury. And it was an issue because he has alimony and child support, and the jury fund does not cover that. And so he was dismissed. So we're down to 3 alternates. That did concern the judge a little bit that on day 1, so early, we lost a juror. But there's still the 12 plus 3 alternates. A reminder, they don't know who's who. They don't know who will be deliberating. That will be discussed after closing arguments. It will be at random, a lottery type system. So we lost a juror. Then opening statements. But before we get to opening statements, there was another issue. Brandon Boudreau was in the courtroom today. Brandon is listed on Lori Vallow's witness list. The state argued that Brandon should have a right to be in there because Lori has not served him with a subpoena, and they don't really know the contents of what he will be testifying about. Lori does not want him in there. Lori said he's my witness and he's going to talk about things, her term. The prosecution, Trina Kay, said, what are these things that, filling in the gap? What does that mean? They ended up going into sidebar, which is where they play white noise over the courtroom. The prosecutor and Lori put on headphones, so does the judge, and they have little microphone connectors, and they talked quite at length. Then after that was done, Trina Kay walked Brandon out of the courtroom, and then they returned. The judge did strike Brandon from the witness list without prejudice, meaning if later on in the trial there does become some relevant issue that he could testify to, they will call him to be a witness. So he did stay in the courtroom with his wonderful wife, and he was sitting on the same row as Kay Woodcock. Jerry Vallow, Charles's brother, he was in there, along with Rex Connor, Lori's uncle. Rex's 2 daughters were there as well. I interviewed them at the last trial they came. Who else was in there? There were some other family members. So there were people there. Kay Woodcock, I mentioned her. She will testify most likely later this week. So that's kind of what happened before all the jury was brought in. This was done outside of the presence of the jury. There was a lot of stuff happening. Then it came time for opening statements, and we went straight from opening statements into 2 police officers taking the stand and a firefighter taking the stand. And then we'll talk about that tonight. We'll also remember Charles for the man he was. We, of course, are learning a lot more about Charles during this trial compared to the other 2. And we also have some shout outs and some cities, and we want to get to your questions. So with that, let's jump right into opening statements. Trina Kay giving opening statements on behalf of the state. I want to play how she began. The very first words we heard out of her mouth in front of the jurors how she said it. Do want to mention, I realize the video quality is not the best here. Court TV was the pool, and of course there's always a lot of kinks to work out on the first day of a trial, and they were shooting through glass. There was a media room. I should say the courtroom was packed. There was not one open seat. Some people were turned away today. They waited and waited and waited. I got to the court around 7:15. The hearing didn't start till 10:30, the trial. People were at the front of that line at 5 a.m. and they're media. And so they let the media in first, 15 members of the media, and then there was an overflow media room, and then members of the public went in. But I mean, there were people that drove from an hour, 2 hours, many from Idaho. Many people who we saw at the first two trials were there today. It was good to see them. We'll get into that a bit later. So I say this because you might be watching the video and saying, why is the quality so bad? It did get better as the trial went on. But here is how Trina Kay, prosecutor for Maricopa County, began her opening statement.
So I'm going to need you to stay close to me the next couple days. Mel, too. She can't go to Utah. They're planking some kind of intervention, but want Mel out of the way, so I'm left alone. I need to come get the stuff at your house tomorrow and secure it. Lots to do. Thanks for standing by me. It's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you. Lori Daybell, the woman seated over here, wrote this to her brother, Alex Cox, on July 9th of 2019, 2 days before they killed Charles Vallow. But to understand why this is so meaningful, why this is relevant, you have to understand the context. So let's talk about it. In July of 2019, Lori Vallow was married to Charles Vallow. Lori Vallow lived here in Arizona, Chandler. Charles Vallow lived in Texas. In July of 2019, Lori Daybell was Lori Vallow, married to Charles Vallow. In July of 2019, Lori Vallow wanted to be Lori Daybell, wife of Chad Daybell. And in July of 2019, Lori Vallow wanted to keep the same lifestyle that she had with Charles. And she could get all of this if Charles was dead. She could marry Chad Daybell and become Lori Daybell. She would get a $1 million life insurance policy from Charles Vallow. She would get Social Security for herself and their son, JJ, as a child of a dead spouse. And all of this would be true if Charles Vallow was dead.
So Trina Kay starts off by setting it up about Lori's names, obviously. Lori Vallow, Lori Daybell. She wanted to become Lori Daybell. She wanted money. She wanted to live her lifestyle, and simply could achieve that, simply, quote unquote, by getting rid of Charles. Trina went on to talk about that the jurors will see text messages, that they'll hear about Ned Schneider, that they'll hear a witness, Serena Sharp, testify about a girls' weekend where she became so concerned because Lori was talking about how she was crushing up JJ's pills, putting them in Charles's protein shakes to try to poison him. Serena was so concerned about this, she went to Lori the next day and said, if he dies because of this, I'm going to have to go to the police. And Lori said she was only joking. We hear a lot about the $1 million life insurance policy. We heard her references in her opening statements, Trina Kay. She talked about the iCloud accounts that we've heard so much about in the other trials, the text messages that were in the cloud. And then Trina talks a little bit about Adam Cox, who will testify, and his text messages and interactions with Charles Vallow leading up until the fatal shooting. And we hear for, I believe, the first time, well, we will hear for the first time, a woman Charles went on a date with the night before he was killed. He had met this woman through an LDS dating app, and he talked about, well, I'm going to play the clip from Trina. I see a few of you are confused about Laban. Let me explain, and Nephi. I will be like Nephi. Before I play the clip from Trina, I actually had another reporter from another outlet who hasn't followed this who came out and said, I had to go research Nephi. To give you some context as to the phrase there, Nephi is a prophet in the Book of Mormon who, according to the Book of Mormon, was commanded by God to kill a man named Laban who was evil. And he went with his brothers and killed Laban. And Lori, it appears, is comparing herself to Nephi and her brother Alex to Nephi going to kill someone who is evil. And Trina K referenced Nephi, I will be like Nephi, the phrase that Lori said a few times throughout her opening statement. Okay, jumping back, I hope that clarifies your questions because I know a lot of you are asking them. Jumping back to the texts between Adam and Charles, and then the date that Charles went on the night before he was killed. Here's that clip.
Adam didn't know that his brother Alex had been summoned to help his sister Lori be like Nephi, that it was time to kill Charles. The text messages from Lori to Alex about that intervention that she knew about and being like Nephi show that by the evening of July 9th of 2019, Lori knew that Charles was trying to have an intervention. An intervention. In that text message, remember, she said they are trying to have an intervention. She knew it was Charles and others. She also told her brother he had to stay close for the next couple days because she knew that she was going to be seeing Charles on the 11th when he came over to pick up their son, JJ, to take him to school. She told him, it's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you. A few minutes after Lori had texted Alex that message on July 9th that they were going to be like Nephi, Alex called his sister Lori, and they talked for over 56 minutes, planning how they were going to get rid of Charles. Alex would stay close with his gun, and he and Lori would be like Nephi. July 10th of 2019 is a day before Charles was killed. We know from text messages that by 7:18 p.m., Alex was already at Lori's house. He brought a garbage bag with some clothes and an orange duffel bag with his .45 caliber handgun and 2 extra magazines of ammunition. He was prepared. We also know that the evening of July 10th, Charles sent a message to Lori letting her know that he would be over at 7:30 a.m. the next day to pick up JJ, to take him to school. Lori and Alex knew exactly when this murder would happen and where it would happen. They just had to make sure that Charles stayed in the house. You'll hear that on the evening of July 10th, Charles spent his last night alive on a date. He had been on several dating apps and appeared to be moving on. You will hear from his date, Nancy Jo, that she and Charles had met on an LDS dating site a few days before. You will hear that she had talked to him and texted him for hours. Sometimes they would talk for 3 hours on the phone. Nancy Jo will tell you that Charles told her about everything of his relationship, his wife's beliefs, everything that was going on. And he had told her about this change to the beneficiary of his life insurance. She will tell you it sounded like a lot of drama, but she still was interested and wanted to meet this person, and so they met that evening for dinner. She'll tell you that she understood on the 11th that Charles would be picking up his son, that he was actually going to meet a realtor about finding a place to rent here so he could be closer to JJ, and that he was going to try to get in touch with Adam to meet up. And then they were supposed to meet later in the day. She will also tell you that she actually told Charles, kind of joking, but in a way to end the drama, why don't you just tell Lori that you changed the life insurance policy so she knows it's not her? Nancy Jo will tell you the next day she texted Charles, she called him, and she actually thought he had ghosted her. She didn't know he was dead until a few months later when she saw something on the news, a photo of him, and actually learned that he had been killed on July 11th.
Thank goodness Charles talked about it. Do you ever wonder, like, what if he had kept quiet and been like, I better not tell my date all this stuff? Or what if he hadn't changed the life insurance policy? He spoke about it. He spoke about it with Adam. There is a trail of receipts, literal receipts, text messages. I guess not literal receipts because that would mean physical receipts, but there are physical things that they have, a conversation with a date about what was happening in his life. We're going to hear from the date during the trial. We're going to hear from Adam during the trial. Trina K went on to talk about how the day of the shooting, Lori left the house. Alex stayed and staged the scene, quote, making mistakes. She said, you will hear about the mistakes he made. Trina K talked about the baseball bat, that there was no blood in the house. If he had been hit hard with a bat or injured any other way, there might be droplets of blood. There might be a wash rag that was covered in blood and in the sink. There might be something. The only blood in the home was pooled around Charles's body. There wasn't blood dripping down the hall. There wasn't blood in the sink, nothing. The only blood was at Charles's body. She argued that the defense will say this was self-defense. She said it wasn't self-defense. It was a staged murder. And it was all to get $1 million from the life insurance policy. Here is how Trina K ended her statement.
As we go through this trial, you'll be provided with phone calls, emails, text messages, and hear testimony that lays out the motive for this murder, money, and Chad Daybell. You will see text messages and hear from people who Lori trusted and who were later pushed away, people who really don't want to be part of this trial, but were pulled into it by this defendant and her desire to get rid of Charles to be with Chad. People who heard Lori for months saying Charles was gone, possessed. People who will establish that this murder was premeditated. You will hear text messages from July 9th by Lori to her brother, Alex Cox, that he had to stay near her, that it was all coming to a head, and she would be like Nephi, and so would he. A justified killing, just like the prophet. And later, the text message to Chad where she told him that Charles changed the life insurance policy before they got rid of Ned. A confession by Lori of how religion and money were twisted to justify Charles's murder. At the end of this trial, the state will come to you and ask you to hold the defendant responsible for the death of Charles Vallow and find her guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Thank you.
Okay, that was how she ended it. I know many of you are saying, I can't hear. I wish they put lapel mics on everybody that speaks in the courtroom. I look at it from a production standpoint. Of course, this is a courtroom, so there were some moments that were hard to hear, but you can hear the whole thing. You can go watch all of Trina K's opening statement. I believe it was around 40 minutes on our YouTube channel if you want to watch the whole thing. And Lori Vallow's opening statement, which happened directly after Trina K's. Lori went up. She introduced herself to the jury. And here is what she said.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I have been charged with a crime, a serious crime. And the only question here is, did I commit this crime? Conspiracy. Conspiracy is an agreement between two or more people to commit a crime. Okay, so you see here. Okay. has to be an agreement. There has to be a plan. The evidence in this case will show that Charles Vallow and I got married in February 2006. It will show that it was my fourth marriage and Charles' third marriage. At that time, we each had 2 children. I had Colby, who was 9, and Tylee, who was 3. Charles had Cole, who was also 9, and Zach, who was 7. The evidence will show that our family moved from Austin, Texas to Chandler, Arizona in 2009. The evidence will show that Charles and I adopted our great-nephew, JJ, who was born in 2012. It will also show that Charles and I were married for over 13 years and were raising 5 children. The evidence will show that I was a licensed cosmetologist and worked as a hairstylist for 20 years while we lived in Austin, Texas. The evidence will show that Charles was a licensed life insurance salesman and worked as an independent contractor, selling life insurance policies and annuities, and owned his own business. The evidence will show that Charles and I purchased life insurance policies early in our marriage, and Charles had them issued to the maximum amount possible to each of us. The evidence will show that Charles was 17 years older than me, and that because of Charles' age and an issue that he had with high blood pressure, the maximum amount of life insurance that could be approved for Charles was $1 million. The maximum amount of life insurance that I could be approved for because of my age and my health was $2 million. The evidence will show that throughout our 13-year marriage that we always had life insurance policies. When a 10-year policy lapsed, Charles would shop for another company who would approve us for the maximum amount of life insurance. The evidence will show that this was Charles' job. This is what he did. I helped him in this business, and this is what he did. The evidence will show that in 2016, Charles repurchased a new $2 million life insurance policy on me, and he was the sole beneficiary.
So Lori is talking about the life insurance policy. She repeatedly used the phrase, the evidence will show, the evidence will show. She kind of walked through the fact that Charles was a baseball player, semi-pro, that Tylee and Charles had a rough relationship. Then she became emotional. And I know some of you have asked if it was superficial, if she was faking it, if she really was emotional to pull at the heartstrings of the jurors. I don't know. You be the judge if you missed it. Here is Lori becoming emotional in front of the jurors and asking for a tissue.
The evidence will show that Alex and Charles got into a physical struggle for the bat and fell onto the ground. The evidence will show that Tylee, who was on the ground, was lifted up by me and sent outside to get away from the struggle and to protect JJ, who was still in the running car, in the rental car in the driveway. The evidence will show that after this struggle on the ground between Charles and Alex, that Charles prevailed with the bat and began to come towards me with the bat as I ran away from him into the kitchen. The evidence will show that at some point while I was running away from Charles, who was chasing me with the bat, that Alex apparently retrieved his gun. The evidence will show that I ran outside to the children and that Alex shot Charles in self-defense. The evidence will show that Tylee and I had both run outside without shoes. The evidence will show that JJ was still in the front seat of the rental car with the engine running and struggling to get out of the car. Tylee was trying to keep him in. The evidence will show that Tylee and I got into the rental car with JJ and drove away. The evidence will show you that I drove the children away from the residence towards JJ's school. Can I grab a tissue?
Yes.
The evidence will show that I drove the children through the Burger King drive-thru that Charles had promised JJ.
What do you think? Was it a real? I don't know. Was it real or not? That's the question. Lori went on to talk about Joseph Ryan, her third husband, which is interesting to me because, well, you'll hear what happened. The prosecution objected. And there were, I would say, I don't know, the whole day, maybe 5 to 10 objections from the prosecution. Lori didn't object once. In fact, there was one moment I thought she might object. I don't remember what, but the officer on the stand, well, we'll get to that in a minute. The officer on the stand repeated, I believe, something that he had been told to him. And I thought that the defense might object on hearsay, and they didn't. But that's beside the point. And I'm not an attorney, so it could be completely wrong. But here is where Lori Vallow brought up her third husband, Joseph Ryan, and the prosecution objected.
The evidence will show that in April of 2018, Tylee's biological father passed away from a heart attack. And at that time, Charles called Social Security and made an appointment at the Social Security
I'm
office.
going to object to hearsay.
Sustained.
It will show that we did get Social Security for Tylee for her deceased father until she was 18 years old, and she was 15 years old at the time.
So that's just a little bit of a flavor of the objection. Lori went on to talk about, her opening statement was probably 20 minutes, maybe 30, closer to 20, I believe. And here is how she wrapped up her final opening statement.
The evidence will show that Chandler police treated this incident as self-defense.
I'm going to object to that.
Objection sustained. The jury should disregard that last statement.
The evidence will show you that my brother, Alex Cox, passed away on December 12th, 2019, almost exactly 5 months to the day after Charles, my husband, passed away. The evidence will show that Alex passed away from a blood clot in his lung.
Objection again.
I'll sustain the objection. It's not relevant for this matter.
The evidence will show you that I am the only person being charged with this crime.
I'm going to object to the relevance of that.
Sustained.
As the state has mentioned, they are alleging that insurance money was my motive. Social Security was my motive. Spouses having insurance policies is not a crime. Collecting Social Security is not a crime. Self-defense is not a crime. A family tragedy is not a crime. It's a tragedy. Thank you.
A family tragedy is not a crime, it's a tragedy. That is how Lori ended her opening statement. It's memorable. I mean, it's memorable, and she did lay it out very much like a lawyer might lay it out. And right after that, we went straight into witness number 1, Sergeant Erwin Wierbicki from the Chandler Police Department. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. He was the very first officer to respond to the scene, one of the first of two. Both the two officers who were very first on scene both testified today, both with Chandler Police. He says he got to the scene and both of them noticed how calm, nonchalant Alex Cox was, having just been involved in a fight with a brother-in-law and having just shot and killed a man. Alex was very calm. There was body camera footage that was played. We talked about this last night. I don't think I ended up showing it, but if you go to our YouTube channel and want to watch it, you can. They showed the complete unblurred footage in court, and you can watch that too. We do see Charles Vallow dead in the house, and the officers walking around making sure nobody else is in the home, checking for other weapons, making sure the scene is secure. And he could not find an identification on Charles. Charles's wallet was not there with him near his body. The prosecution not only showed that footage without sound, just the video, Then they showed 2 screen grabs from the actual video. One was Charles's head on the ground with the one officer taking a pulse. 2, and there was no pulse. And 2, the other was a wider shot showing the EMTs, the paramedics working on Charles Vallow's body doing CPR. The officer, Erwin Wierbicki, did not give CPR because Charles had been dead for quite some time. They talked about, Trina K questioned him about Alex calling 911. Remember that Alex did not call 911 for, I believe it was 47 minutes, around 50 minutes. Charles Vallow lay there dead. Who he did call was Lori Vallow 3 minutes after the shooting. Allegedly, he called her 3 minutes after the shooting, and they talked for some time, and then they called again before 911 was called. Here is the, also Charles's phone was not there. Here's a little bit of Trina questioning the sergeant.
You told us that when that individual who was on the call with 911 came out, that you observed the phone with him. He was kind of holding it.
Yeah.
Did you ever see any other phone in the house as you were looking around? Anything obvious laying around?
I don't recall, no. I don't believe I did.
Okay. No phone on the ground near the deceased male?
Not that I recall, no.
After you had cleared the house, allowed fire to enter, and other officers were arriving, were you tasked with going out to put up some crime scene tape?
Yes, ma'am.
What does that mean?
It's just tape that keeps the general public out, keeps the media out, so we have a secure scene, and it doesn't get tainted by anybody or anything.
So that included both the house and some of the street.
Yes, ma'am.
Did that sort of end your involvement?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
All right, cross-examination.
And here is Lori asking those questions. Lori gets a turn. Here's what she asked.
It's Sergeant Wierbicki, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I like to get that right. Okay. You said that the individual exiting the house was nonchalant. Is that correct?
I don't know if I used those words, but he seemed very calm, yes.
Very calm.
Yes.
Is that the same thing to you as nonchalant?
I wouldn't use that word, so I would say he looked very calm and unbothered.
But you said nonchalant a minute ago.
I don't recall saying that.
Okay. Does everyone act the same in a stressful situation that you've experienced? No? Are you qualified to give someone a psychological evaluation?
No.
No. You put your hand on my husband's neck for checking for a pulse, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That's what you did when you first came in?
Yes.
Did you perform CPR?
No.
No. Why not?
Because it was apparent to me that he was deceased.
And that's not your protocol?
To what?
To perform CPR until fire comes in?
Not if it's going to make it even worse because they had apparent gunshot wounds to the chest.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if I start pumping on his chest, it's going to start spewing blood out of his chest even at a more rapid pace.
So Lori made I don't want to say a big deal, but kind of a deal about him not doing CPR. Trina K then gets up on cross exam, and I would say Lori probably questioned him for 10 minutes. And it's interesting, I was reminded a lot of the questions John Thomas did in Idaho, kind of that line of questioning, just kind of clarifying questions and whatnot after a witness testified. There was some of that, in my opinion, today that reminded me of, it's clear that Lori absorbed that or seemed to absorb that from her trial in Idaho. So Lori kind of insinuated about the Alex being calm and nonchalant. We'll get into that with the next witness, but also the fact that CPR was not done on her husband. And Trina K then got up and did some follow-up questions. Here's how that went.
When a person is been shot and you check for a pulse, and you believe they are deceased, as a police officer, are you supposed to touch the body?
No.
Is the body basically a crime scene?
Yes.
Based upon your training and experience, did you believe that the victim was deceased?
Yes, ma'am.
Do fire have EKG, heart monitors, and things that they use to determine if maybe you missed a pulse?
Yes, ma'am.
When you talked about giving CPR, if an individual is now a crime scene, would giving CPR to that deceased person change the crime scene?
Yes.
And so as someone who believed the person was deceased, you did not want to modify or change the crime scene?
Correct.
You were asked about the gun. Is the gun part of the crime scene?
Yes.
Were you responsible for processing the crime scene?
No.
Why didn't you go in there and pick it up and start handling it?
Because I didn't want to alter where it was laying when he got done using it.
All right. So you can watch his whole testimony also on our YouTube channel. Right after him, it was Robert Crothheim. He retired from Chandler Police 3 years ago. We also saw his body camera. So the first officer went in the house, walked around, recorded, basically secured the home. The second officer, he stayed with Alex. He was with Alex from the second Alex walked out of the house with his hands up, calm, sat on the curb. He was with him. And then up until the point that he drove him to the police station in Chandler for further questioning with a detective. And he says that, again, Alex, in the body camera show, Alex walking out of the house, again, calm, very chill, not like he'd just been in a big fight and shot someone to death, but he was just very quiet. He talked about, this is the same officer when Lori and Tylee showed up after leaving the home and coming back from the Burger King and the Walgreens after dropping JJ off at school. He also encountered them. We've seen that body camera footage. We played it today again in court. We didn't hear audio except the part where he spoke with Lori and Tylee at the scene. Again, Lori's laughing, and we just moved here. Hi, neighbor. They'd only been in the home for 3 weeks. The house was empty, too. All the witnesses testified that the house was empty. There was nothing in there. So here is observation of Trina Kay questioning Officer Crothheim about what he witnessed that day.
Can you describe sort of his appearance and demeanor as you observed him coming out of the house?
His clothes were clean. He was calm, not emotional at all. Different than what I would have anticipated.
When he first exited, did you notice any injuries to him?
He was holding, it was a white rag at the time. It was just kind of red and white. He was holding on the back of his head.
When he first exited or later?
As he's coming out of the house.
Did you notice any difficulty walking or talking when you first had contact with him?
No.
Any difficulty sitting or standing?
No.
Did you learn the name of this person?
I did.
What was his name?
Alex Cox.
Did you observe him sweating at all when he first came out?
No.
Any type of jitters?
No.
Any uneven or broken voice as he's talking to you?
No.
At some point, did you notice an injury to him?
I did.
And where was it?
On the back of his head, towards his right side.
And what did you see?
I articulated my written report as about an inch laceration, a small like knot, and it was bleeding a little bit.
That noise you heard suddenly went off, that dur. It was like somebody's phone vibrating, and then it got loud and was really weird. Turns out it may have been a juror's phone. He had set his phone on the little banister in front of him, and the judge later said, would you mind taking your phone down? Side note, I will say the jury selection, the jury system, at least in this case, and it might be different on a capital murder case, but like the jurors, I went down to the cafe for lunch, and there were jurors just getting their lunch there and eating, and I saw one outside the courthouse at lunch. It's very different than in Idaho, where all of these jurors were together all the time. They ate lunch together in the same room. They were always together. Here you see jurors coming and going. They go down to the jury room. One of you wrote me and said, not a juror, someone who had served on a previous jury wrote me and said that there's a jury parking garage where you meet and then they shuttle the jurors over for all the different cases for the day. So it's interesting to see the differences. Again, and these jurors are not sequestered. They weren't in Chad and Lori's case except during the deliberation process for Chad's sentence. But that was that noise you heard there. Well, now, excuse me. Now I'll play Lori asking some questions to this officer. Again, focusing on her focus seemed to be how Alex was calm and, relatively at peace that day, you could say.
How long do you think that you were at the residence? What was the whole time before you guys left to go to the police station? Do you remember? Do you recall?
No, I do not. It would be in my CAD history on when I transported him from the home to the PD, so I'd have to look at that, and I don't know, 40 minutes, half hour, 40 minutes, something like that.
Now, someone on the video, and I don't remember who it was, but put a phone into a evidence bag. Was that you?
I don't recollect that.
Okay. And then got into the car. Did someone ride with you to the police station from the residence? Just you and Alex were in the car?
Yes,
No other officers?
correct.
But before you got into the car, an officer came over and took his phone and put it in an evidence bag?
You're asking me from recollection. I don't remember that. It's probable because we usually try to bring their property to the area where we're going to, so it's probable.
I just didn't see it in your report, but I saw it on the body cam, so I wondered if you knew. Okay.
I'm going to object to the defendant testifying.
All right. Please only ask questions.
Sure.
When you make statements about what you saw or heard, that's testimony.
I apologize, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Lori, the judge told her, you have to ask questions. You can't testify. And she kind of went down a little rabbit hole there of somebody in the video, I don't remember who, put the phone in the bag. The officer didn't. When he says CAD report, that's basically the history of the case, minute by minute. Call comes in at 8:47, arrived on scene 8:51, 8:59, drove Alex to the police station. I'm just making up these times, but that's the CAD report shows it. And at times today, the witnesses, the prosecution did show them the CAD report to help refresh their memory. So it's a base. We're starting for the jurors. Think about it. They don't know anything about the case. My wife was saying she watched a little bit today, and she goes, "It feels like we've heard this before." And Lori's going into all this history that we already know, and so many of us that have followed the case are like, "Yep, heard that." Well, these jurors haven't heard anything. So the prosecution is setting the case with the morning Alex was shot, the morning Alex shot Charles. The morning Charles was shot. Here's what the two officers who responded to the scene say they observed. Here's what their body camera shows. Here's what their description of what was happening with the people there that day. Here's what happened. And then they will lay in the puzzle pieces as we go with the insurance agent and whatnot. I mentioned the whole Lori with this particular witness said, well, Alex was calm. How in so many words, how do you know that wasn't just his normal demeanor? How do you know he's not just a calm person? The witness said he could be. She goes, you're pretty calm here on the stand. What if you're nervous? Some of us, when we get nervous, we're calm. We're I don't want to say submissive, but we're calm. And she tried to say, well, maybe that was how he was that day, that there was all this chaos, or that the scene was not chaotic. Everything was calm. There weren't chaotic neighbors. There weren't chaotic witnesses coming up. The police were not chaotic. Everyone was calm, and that's just how Alex was. She said this in so many words and got him to, say, okay. But then Trina Kay got up on redirect and said this about that particular point.
The beginning of cross-examination, you were asked about Alex Cox's demeanor. Do you recall that?
I do.
And you had advised that he was nonchalant and calm, right?
Yes.
And you were asked whether or not you were nonchalant and calm too, correct?
Yes.
Had you just shot someone?
No.
You were asked if the firefighters were calm and nonchalant. Had they just shot someone?
As far as I know, no.
How about Officer Wiz? You said he was nonchalant and calm too. Had he just shot anyone?
No.
So it's not really exactly the same to compare you to the shooter, right?
Correct. I would not compare us.
He's like, please don't compare us. Don't compare me to the shooter. Who wants to be compared to the shooter? One interesting thing that I think I really like is that the jurors in Arizona can ask questions. So after the testimony and after the state and then the defense to the state, the judge says to the jurors, do any of you have questions? If they do, in fact, if they have a question during the testimony, they can write it down. There's a basket. They can pass the paper into the basket. And then at the end, the judge calls for questions. And if there's not any, they move on. There were not any questions for the first witness. There was one for the second. The judge got the question. They went into the sidebar. They put on the headphones. They turned on the white noise. We then came back and the state asked the question. I don't remember what it was. It was a clarifying question. But I think it's great to have the jurors be able to ask questions. Think of how much that could help by the time you get to deliberations. If you've got these nagging questions that might seem little, but yet they could make a big difference. So we did have a juror question today. They don't like stand up and say them. They write them down and then they submit them in. This witness finished testifying this afternoon, and then the state called their third witness, who we have actually heard from before. He's a firefighter. His name is Scott Cowden, and he was called to the scene, and we didn't quite make it through. The state finished their questioning today. Lori Vallow Daybell will begin tomorrow with her questioning of him. But here's just a little clip of what the firefighter said today on the stand.
In this case, had you received any information about whether or not he was receiving CPR?
Yes, I recall we had that info two ways. We had it with the PTI on our computer screen, which would be coming from our fire department dispatch. And then we have the ability to also listen on the radio to the PD channels. And so we can hear communication between the officers that are getting on scene and then the PD dispatch. And they also communicated that at some point in time.
When you entered the house, was there an officer already inside?
I believe there was an officer inside with Captain Keller.
And did you observe anyone giving the patient CPR?
No.
Can you tell us what you saw when you first entered the house?
You walked in the front door, just kind of a little entryway, and it kind of, I feel like it stepped down into maybe a formal kind of family room or something, but it was empty with no furniture anywhere in the room. That jumped out at first because it makes it easier. Like sometimes we're on scenes where the patient could be between a bed and a closet and you got to move them somewhere. So those thoughts are already kind of in your mind that you may have to move a patient just to have better access, and that was not a challenge here.
So one of the key parts of his testimony is that he had been told, the firefighters had been told on their way there that someone had given Charles Vallow CPR. Alex Cox had said that. And he noticed when he got there, he said, when someone gives CPR, there's normally an indentation in the chest. And the first time you go to give compressions, the first few times, normally ribs can break. There's crunching feeling and noises, like the noise of a knuckle popping in a way. So and also if someone has been shot and are given CPR, a lot of times they can spew up blood. And So this firefighter goes in there to do the CPR, and first of all, he said there wasn't a lot of blood all over the area. It was just contained to underneath the body. And he realized that because if they were going to set their bags down or some other tools or apparatuses or whatever on the ground, they weren't covered in blood. He did put on his gloves. He did do the CPR. And when he went to do the CPR, he did not notice any of the indentions, nothing like that. He just started to do the compressions, and that cracking noise feeling was there. So they'd been told that CPR was done, but clearly it had not been done. There was no blood on Charles's mouth, as if he had spit some up. In fact, they showed a photo of his face on the ground, and there was not blood. That was a key moment from his testimony about the CPR not being done. He then did give CPR, I believe they said, for about 3 minutes, 3 to 5, but it was clear Charles Vallow had died, and so they called the time of death. They called the time of death there, and then they left Charles there for the crime scene investigators to take care of, and that's kind of where we ended up on his testimony today. If you were watching the live feed, well, not a live feed, 30-minute delay, you can go watch his testimony too. The last 5 minutes got cut, but we've posted it because they closed the courthouse right at 5. You have to be out of there at 5. And court went to like 4:35. So we couldn't quite get that last 5 minutes of the feed, of the video feed. So it's a separate video on our page. Sorry about that. We're working to make sure that doesn't happen tomorrow. Thank you for bearing with us today with all of these things. Let me show you why we're here as we remember Charles Vallow and his beautiful son, JJ, and of course, Tylee. Charles Vallow was desperate to help his family. And it seems like, based on today, he had finally decided it was time to move forward in his life without Lori, as much as it pained him. And he was dating again and came to see JJ, his little boy, and when his life was taken. And so tonight we remember Charles and all of his family and the families of JJ and Tylee and Tammy Daybell too. All right, I do want to do some shout outs. First of all, a quick couple of photos from today. This was around 7:15. You can see the line. There were definitely people there in the courthouse. We'll see if it continues this way. Normally opening statements days are pretty busy, and such was the case this morning. My Australia friends, you might remember these guys. They came last trial. They're from Australia. They came to Boise for Chad's trial. Then they came and stopped by our newsroom to pick up some T-shirts. It was great seeing them again. They just happened to plan another trip to America that coincided with this trial. They're seeing different parts of the state. So it was great seeing them. And guess what? My Uncle Stephen and my cousin Allison came to the trial today. They had told me they might be coming. It was really great to see them. I have a story about Allison, quick diversion. Years and years and years ago, she lived in New York City with my cousin. They're married. I mean, they weren't cousins. They're married now, so she's my cousin-in-law. He's my cousin. He was going to dental school, and I was going to New York for something. And I said, let's go like see a show, like a TV show. So we decided we'd go see Dr. Oz. He was filming that day. And so Allison and I went to Dr. Oz, and it was a show. I don't remember what the topic was, but they wanted the women to bring their swimming suits. So they got video of them running out with their swimming suits. And I remember leaving that day thinking, I wonder what it would be like to go on a talk show like this, like as a guest. Like that'll never happen. Kid you not, February 2020, 2 weeks after the whole I confronted Lori and Chad in Hawaii, Dr. Oz had me there as a guest on that set. So Allison went with me, that original Dr. Oz. Now she was back here. My Uncle Stephen there, he has so many stories he could tell you about me because I'd go out to their summer during teenage years in Omaha, Nebraska. I remember I was out there one summer and the OJ trial was on, and that's where I started to watch court stuff. And anyway, it was great to see them. Susan Hendricks used to be on HLN. It was great to see her at the courthouse. She, when this story broke, would have me on her program, and I appreciate that. And please, can we all give a shout out to Jordan? Jordan from East Idaho News, my colleague. We got this 3-screen apparatus here that he hooked up to his laptop to bring you the live stream. We don't have, our newsroom is small, like 10, 12 people. We don't have like these big newsrooms with tech people and engineers. Jordan does it all. He figured out how we could not only bring you the video, but we have to implement a 30-minute delay, which creates another issue behind the scene. He troubleshooted all day. Hats off to Jordan, just an incredible guy. So glad to work with him. This is another shot of what it looks like on his end as he's making this happen. So thank you to Jordan. And I have to give a shout out to Tara, who brought me a beautiful goodie bag. Thank you, Tara. I've got them right here. And you know what? There's so many delicious candies in here. I cannot wait to eat this Chico stick. Remember these? I'm an old person at heart, I think, because I love these Chico sticks. I saw that in there. I'm like, holy cow, it's a big one. It's a big Chico stick. So thank you so much, Tara, for being there. I want to thank our sponsors, too. Alan Browning with Browning Law. They are sponsoring Courtroom Insider during this trial. That helps us a lot because, you know, traveling and whatnot, they're helping cover the cost. So Alan Browning, thank you to Browning Law. And shout out to Teton Toyota. They hooked me up with a beautiful car. They do provide car rentals there at Teton Toyota. Let me show you the car I'm driving around. Look at that baby. It lasted. I parked it over the weekend. There we go. It's a nice Toyota Prius. So it gets great gas mileage in the Arizona sun. Thank you to Teton Toyota. Okay, now let me get to your questions. Thank you for your patience and thank you for watching. Here we go. Shout outs. First of all, Amy Ogden and her mother, Joe. They wanted to come to CrimeCon and meet me. Unfortunately, Joe is battling lung cancer. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I hope you get better, Joe. We're all hoping the best for you, praying that you'll be all right and that you'll recover soon. Hopefully you can make it to CrimeCon one day. Elizabeth Alphin, Gail and Carrie from Radcliffe. Steve says, hello, Nate. Hi, Steve. Good to hear from you. Misty and Lucy, Tasha, Natasha and her work buddy, Sandy, who have watched since the beginning and chat about it often. Thank you. Thank you for watching from the beginning and for watching if you're brand new today. We have a lot of newbies watching. Not that that's bad. I'm glad you're here. Alex Lemoyne, the graphics you see here on Courtroom Insider, you can thank Alex for those. That's our digital creator. He's a great guy and he does so much. He's from France. Many of you see him on our Secret Santa videos, especially a lot of you ladies are like, who's the Frenchman? That's Alex. Ricky Beavers, Alex Howard, another Alex. Javier De Jesus, thank you, Javier. Marsha Colette, Deanna Roughton, and Nate Eaton for his amazing coverage and your fast, accurate, typed updates. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We have people watching tonight on the Crow Reservation in Montana, Cody, Wyoming, Guam, India, Puerto Rico, Chula Vista, California, Lancaster, the UK, Waite Park, Minnesota, Pocatello, Idaho. Good to see you, Pocatello. Belfast, Ireland, Vienna, Austria, in the beautiful hollows of Southeast Kentucky, Germany, and Salt Lake City, Utah. Bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all of you who purchased East Idaho News swag. I want to see your shirts. If you've ordered them, please send a photo in because we'll start showing those here in the evening. Let me get to your questions. Lisa. Oh, Lisa, I'm glad you asked this. I was going to bring it up. I'd like to know if you think Lori Vallow has a black wedding ring on her left finger. I've been trying to see what you think. It's not a ring. One moment, please. It's a hair tie. And she's done this before. She did this in Idaho. She takes a hair tie, puts it on a ringer to signify that she's married. She's made this very, very clear from the beginning. I am married to Chad Daybell. He is my husband. I'm his wife. So yes, that black ring band on her finger does signify that it is a marriage thing. Alina, did Alex Cox self-inflict an injury to the back of his head and claim to police that Charles Vallow attacked him with a bat? We don't 100% know how the injury got there, but one would assume. He was in the house for nearly an hour, 50 minutes, and between the time, we don't know the exact everything that went down in that house, other than what the videotapes interviews have said and what Lori has said. So, yes, I would imagine he did give himself the injury. Mary asks if Chad can watch this trial. Good question. I bet he could if it's on. He has a TV. If there's programming, they don't get court TV in the jail, as far as I know, in the prison. Maybe they do. I don't think they have cable though. I think you get like 10 stations, and I guess he could watch it if it's there. They're not going to restrict him. Pam, when Lori is found guilty, can the judge order she not teach any more classes in prison? No, he can't do that. I mean, I guess he could, but what they'll do is put her in isolation, and she'll be moved to Pocatello, and she'll kind of be able to do what she wants. Is there a date set for Brandon's case, and can people attend? Tess asks. Yes, there is a date. It's going to be the first 2 weeks of June, and it's going to be Monday to Friday. I believe it starts opening statements. They're planning on June 2nd, and they'll pick, I believe they're doing the jury the few days before the last week of May. There's a possibility, it sounds like, if this trial wraps early, they might move it a bit because the judge has some trainings in June. So that's what we'll see. But yeah, and you can attend that one too. Genevieve, if Lori is combative to the point she's doing contempt of court, will the advisory lawyers take over? I don't think the judge will ever say, okay, enough, Lori, it's your attorney's turn. I think she has to submit to that and say, I want them to take over. She was not combative at all today. So I don't know if that will be an issue, but it could be. DC, if someone's not already on the witness list by the state, can they be added? Are Melanie and Colby on the state's list? No, Melanie and Colby are not on the state's list. Neither Melanie Gibb nor Melanie Boudreau-Pawlowski. I believe they can. I think you might be able to add witnesses if they learn new information. I'm not sure, though. You'd have to give both sides a chance to respond. So I don't think they're going to add any more witnesses, but that's a good question. Let me do some research and try to find out. Brandon asks if Charles's son will be there to testify. Sons, no, he has two sons. We haven't seen them. They are not here. I don't expect we'll see them. Perhaps, maybe we will, but they won't. We won't see them to testify. Had the children not been killed, Jenna asks, would Charles and Tammy have gotten the justice they deserve? You mean if just Charles died and then Tammy died? That's a good question. I don't know. We'd have to see. Sarah, is there any proof of Tylee's pancreatitis or the seriousness of it? She did have it. We know that for sure. She did have it. She was in the hospital a lot. I don't know if a lot is an accurate term. Regularly or frequently, commonly, I don't know. She did have it. As far as the severity of it, I've heard that it was severe, but not like majorly life-threatening at times. Matthew, does Lori have to be careful not to mention Chad because it could bring charges to him in Arizona? No, they've said that they don't believe they have enough evidence. They don't believe they have enough to get a conviction on Chad in Arizona. That would be wild if that changes and they do decide to try him. I doubt they will at this point. He's on death row in Idaho. It would just be another trial. But, who knows? We've done 3 now. We have 1 more. Maybe we'll do 5. I know you all would watch, right? What do you think of the balance of the jury? Lynn says, there's definitely more men than women. One of the person that left today was a man. So we're down to 12 men, 3 women. I don't know how on purpose that was. That's just how it shook out. Different age groups, different variety, different races. The jury seems intently focused today. During the opening statements, they were looking ahead. I did at some point see some jurors taking notes, and that's common. But I think it's a good mix of the jury. I guess we'll see. And can you tell us who the potential defense witnesses are? Yes, and we went through that yesterday. And if you go back and watch yesterday's, I have it all on there. So they're all on there. Sorry, I pull it up now, but I don't want to keep you all too long. Do you personally think Lori is delusional or is she crazy like a fox? Diane asks. Well, I hate giving too much of my own personal opinion, especially during a trial. When it's all done, when all the case is done, maybe one night we'll do a tell-all of what I really think. But I do think there are some delusions there. I definitely do. What is the purpose of this trial? I know it's to get justice for Charles, but she's in prison for life, Red Sky asks. True, both points. To get justice for Charles, I mean, he deserves it. And yes, she's in prison for life. And I guess you could argue, Nancy Grace the other night argued that should that ever be overturned in Idaho, this is an insurance policy, an insurance that Lori will remain locked up forever. So yeah, it's for that. Does the judge, should need be, have the power to remove Lori from defending herself? We talked a little bit about that. Connie, in Lori's interview with the local TV station, she mentioned that she's teaching women who have been in the jail for 8 years. Can you confirm that people stay in jail for 8 years before they're able to go to trial? That's a good question. Normally, at least in Idaho and most states, you're in jail for a year or two. Now, granted, Lori and Chad were in there for a long time, I think 3 or 4 years because of COVID and their trial. But once you're sentenced, you can't get sentenced to jail for more than a year. It's possible, I guess, if there are tons of delays, that people could be in that jail for 8 years. I wouldn't doubt it. Seems like a long time. I do not doubt for 1 second that Lori is teaching these people. I know for a fact that she does this. She did this in Idaho. She did this at the mental hospital in Idaho. She was the activities director, self-proclaimed. She got to curl her hair. It was a mental, she seemed to be one of the most quote unquote normal people there. So yeah, I'm not shocked one bit that she's preaching the word as the way she sees it. Melissa asked, do I think Tylee know that Alex was going to kill Charles? Do you think they rehearsed it? I've wondered that, Melissa. I don't know. I don't know if it was rehearsed. I don't know how much it played out. Clearly, Lori and Alex were in the know. I don't know how much Tylee knew. If the judge presiding over the trial changes, does the new judge get to decide if Lori can represent herself? Also, she can't represent herself at the appeals, right? Second question, she'll have appellate attorneys, at least in Idaho she does. They're assigned the case. Their job, it's not like they do a whole separate trial. Their job is they review the record. They read every single word. They read what the witnesses say. They review the evidence, things like that. She won't be her own appellate attorney. She might waive all appeals and just say, nope, I don't want to appeal, and that's that. But if a new judge were to come in and take over, the case would start over. A judge can't just join halfway through or a week into it and be like, all right, let's pick up. It would have to be new, and it would have to be I imagine, a big deal for just a random judge to just take over. Jimmy asked why Lori isn't facing the death penalty in Arizona. It's because this is a conspiracy. For death penalty, it needs to be first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances. For instance, you kill a cop. The crime is extremely heinous. Children, you torture someone. This is a conspiracy to commit murder, so it's not a death penalty case. Mickey asks if Lori's parents are attending the trial. Haven't seen them yet, but they are both on her witness list. So if they're going to testify for her, they can't because there's an exclusionary rule. You can't be in the courtroom. If she's locked down 23 hours a day, how on earth is she preparing for her trial? How is she teaching aerobics? Patricia asks. You know, that's a good question, Patricia. There seems to be a lot of contradictory information that comes out of Lori's mouth. I'll just say that. Can she sue her co-counsel if Lori loses? No, I don't believe she can. That's from Ray. The judge was very clear, too, when Lori agreed to be her own attorney. He was very clear and made out like, you understand, your advisory council have years and years of experience. They can help you. They can help you. You sure? So they laid that out. Riv asks, I was recently certified for CPR. If you're certified, you're obliged to help. Lori was a fitness instructor, so she had to be certified. It's required. Thoughts? I don't think giving CPR was at all anywhere on Lori's mind. But I guess if it's true, if she was CPR certified, the prosecution could raise that and about why she didn't give CPR on her husband. But yeah, I don't know if that'll come up. How come there was video but not audio for some of the trial today? Tess asked. That's just the way that the prosecutor played the video. I didn't play all the audio, maybe because it was hearsay. It was the cop having a conversation with someone else, and they were able to play the part with Lori because Lori was there in the courtroom. Do you think the prosecution will be using body cam of Charles's encounter with police the night he was murdered? I think you mean well, they played body camera today. I don't know that there was video of Charles encountering with police the night he was murdered. There was early on, but he wasn't murdered that night. He went to the police for help. They might play that. I'm not sure. Pam asked where Larry Woodcock is. Larry stayed home. He's going to be home for this trial, watching from home. Spoke with him the other day. And Kay's here. They're caring for a family member. And so, yeah, he's there. We miss him. Do you think Lori shaking her head vehemently was to play the jury into not believing the state's accuracy? Mackenzie asked. I think so. I mean, she's also a reactionary person. I think she shows her reactions and nodding and no and showing her face. So perhaps, will your recaps during the trial continue? You bet your bippy every night. I will do it here live on Courtroom Insider, and I'll also be doing the live updates My wrists will hate me. I'll find like a massage therapist on Fridays to rub out all the knots on my wrists. We heard a slam like a book. Was told it was Lori. Was it? No, I don't think so. I don't know what that means, but I don't think so. Judy, who can the state bring in to verify that Charles and Tylee didn't get along? I guess they could bring in other things. I've heard that. Well, from Melanie Gibb, I've heard that she was a teenager and didn't get along with her dad. So I've heard that before. I don't know if they'll go down that route, if that'll help their case or not. Does it, I don't know. We'll see. Last question. Can you hear the audio while in the courtroom, Nate? The audio is hard to hear if they're not talking into a microphone. As I said earlier, if it was my way, I would put a lavalier clip mic on all of their lapels and you could hear everything. But it's not a TV studio, it's a courtroom. So hopefully, if you know anybody with the case, they can talk to their mics. I want to thank you all so much for watching tonight. Here's where you can find me. I'm on Facebook. I'm on X, posting updates all day. I'm on my Instagram and YouTube, East Idaho News. That's where you can see all the footage. And my Meeting the Eatons YouTube channel with my fam. We've got that going, so thank you for that. I do want to say that during the trial this year, I will try to do a video on the way into the courtroom every morning and at lunch. Probably not long, maybe 5-10 minutes. We have a longer lunch break, so I have a little bit more time this time around to fill you in on what's happening. So stay tuned for that every day in the morning and at noon. I can't thank you enough for watching. We have the best audience. I still am blown away by how many of you watch, how many of you bring me treats to the courthouse. You are the best. We'll be back tomorrow night for more Courtroom Insider. And if you want to get caught up on the video, head over to our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe, ring the bell, or push the bell, or like, whatever you do. Just, thank you. Thank you all very much. We'll see you tomorrow night. Take care. Goodbye.